The film picks up immediately after the events of the first picture, in which Christopher, a small child, made friends with Winnie-the-Pooh and his pals in the 100 Acre Woods. The animals started to starve when Christopher stopped routinely bringing them food to attend college. After that, they began murdering individuals, but Christopher was able to get away from them in some way. Despite the fact that Christopher, our main character, survived, the majority of the villagers did not accept his account. He gradually started to be shunned by society. However, a tiny percentage of the populace did think Christopher was real. These folks spent months searching the 100 Acre Woods, determined to kill the animals, but they were unable to find any. Now, Pooh and his pals were forced to go farther into hiding, but Chris put in a lot of study time and completed his medical education. As a junior physician at Ashdown Hospital, he soon discovered that the public didn't trust him. In fact, he played the antagonist in a movie about the 100 Acre Massacre. The action then shifts to the present when Alice, Jamie, and Mia, three female friends, are camping and holding a seance in a caravan in the middle of the forest. A force they cannot see shakes their caravan as they finish the last step. They are so terrified by this that they believe the spirit has been called. Alice was suddenly stabbed through the chest by someone when she was leaning against the wagon wall. Jamie hurries to shut the door at this precise time, but the enigmatic entity slams it forcefully, breaking her fingers. It then gradually pushes the caravan in the direction of the lake using its overwhelming strength. Fearful, Mia flees via the rear window and attempts to take off on her quad bike, but it doesn't appear to start. The caravan is flipped over while Jamie is still inside, and the culprit is revealed to be none other than the monstrous Pooh. Even worse, the unfortunate girl gets severely burned when a fabric catches fire. Then, focusing on Mia, Pooh causes her to step on a bear trap. He then drags her away from the quad bike and begins breaking each of her limbs individually. Pooh answers Mia's cries for compassion by plunging her head into the same bear trap, which results in a horrifying demise. Meanwhile, the fire has completely destroyed Jamie's face. The second creature, Owl, appears as if that weren't enough. He smashes Jamie's head into a million pieces with a big chunk of log. After then, the camera pans to Christopher, who is having hypnotherapy at the moment. It turns out that he is beginning to glimpse pictures of his time spent with Pooh and is attempting to recollect a significant childhood memory. He can't seem to remember that significant recollection after that, though, and everything becomes hazy. Chris comes outside to find his best buddy, Lexi, waiting for him after the session. She is stuck by his side and believes his story in spite of all the criticism around him. Chris finds out that his car has been vandalized with the words "murderous" spray painted on it after he and Lexi arrive home. Chris's father makes an effort to lift his spirits, but it appears that Chris is badly impacted. When the police discover the caravan massacre back in the woods, they are taken aback. While they utilize the radio to summon assistance, we witness an unidentified stranger listening in on their chat from his residence. We are shown the 100 Acre Forest in the following scene, where three armed men are seen. They belong to the small group of people who accept Chris' theory that the massacre was committed by animals of some kind. We learn in other places that Pooh and his pals have taken up residence within a big tree. The owl says he observed other hunters trying to find them. He then launches into a tirade about how the Ashdownians view them as a kind of plague. Owl also says that the humans will murder them first if they don't take a stance and defend themselves. All of his friends Piglet, Tigger, and Pooh are furious after hearing this. Once they are back in the jungle, one of the three men goes to investigate after hearing sounds in the distance. However, this proves to be a fatal error, as Pooh takes him down with these. Just before Piglet suddenly assaults the other two men, they too hear strange noises. The two slay the creature after realizing that Chris was speaking the truth after they see Piglet. They soon discover the third guy has had his neck severed and is in a vegetative state. Then Pooh shows up and blows out the second guy's face with Daryl's shotgun, killing the other man as well. The second guy, whose face was blown off, is still alive in the aftermath, and he manages to escape the woodland. Chris is in the hospital the next morning going about his daily business. Sadly, he receives an order from his boss to quit. The man argues that although Chris is competent at work, the hospital has suffered because of his prior behavior. All our poor hero can do is submit his resignation. At that moment, he recognizes a janitor from the corridor as many nurses rush in with the man with his face blown out. Chris knows him right once as Aaron, a friend from school, and wonders what happened to cause his injuries. After the day's events, Chris is devastated. He goes home and plays with Ella, his younger sister. She is the only one who makes him smile and doesn't pass judgment on him. Back in the jungle, we witness a father educating his son about the various kinds of birds. The youngster is peeking through the binoculars when he unexpectedly spots the owl-like monster. Then Al steals his father from him. Later on, we witness Pooh and his friends tossing the man's disfigured body into the river. The following scenario finds Chris in his typical hypnotherapy session, trying to recall prior events. Pooh was actually always bad, as revealed by a narration that accompanies his visions of his friendship with the bear. He used to eat flesh in the same way that he does today, but Chris was too young and gullible to comprehend that. The recollections then switched to Billy's birthday when a number of children had come to celebrate. Suddenly, though, Chris saw the kidnapper's face and watched Billy being coerced into a van. Even with his best efforts, he is unable to recognize the face because it is still hazy. Eventually, a group of police officers find the monster's hideout in the jungle. The sight of deformed human remains and other strange objects startles them. As anticipated, though, they are unable to flee. The creatures appear and destroy them all one at a time. Chris, who is at home somewhere else, is determined to identify the kidnapper. He looks through the internet for information on crimes committed in 2003, the year Billy vanished. Chris then stumbles into an article that claims that 7 kids were abducted in 2003. Additionally, he comes across an article on Arthur Gallup, a well-known genetic researcher who once conducted animal experiments. This man died as a result of his house burning down inexplicably. A police officer comes to see Chris the next morning with some critical news. He discloses that although Aaron is conscious again, he will only speak with Chris. Chris visits his injured pal in the following scenario and asks him what went wrong. Aaron answers, "You were right," to his surprise by writing on a board. Chris becomes aware that the creatures attacked him as a result of this. After writing, "They did this," Aaron takes a step to remove his bandages, exposing his horrifyingly broken face. Chris finally realizes that this man was Billy's kidnapper when he sees the same janitor from earlier peering through the window, but the janitor has already left. In another instance, one of Chris's pals hears some sounds coming from the other room as he is having a shower at home. When he checks, he finds human remains and pieces of meat on the floor, which shocks him. When the man goes outdoors, Al attacks him. The creature fatally stabs him with a knife after spitting acid all over his face. Chris, on the other hand, begins to follow the janitor around. When he eventually finds his home, he sneaks inside with a weapon. The man initially tries to appear completely innocent when approached, but he eventually speaks up. The janitor discloses that Dr. Gallup hired him to abduct other children in return for the repayment of his debts. He goes on to say that the insane doctor would use the children in his experiments. He used to do a number of other unthinkable things, like change their genomes and mix their DNA with that of animals. In the end, Dr. Gallup's experiments were effective, and he produced monsters. But he made the decision to stop them when he learned they were risky. When the janitor learned of his plans, he decided to accompany Dr. Gallup to the 100 Acre Forest. Although he begged him not to kill the kids, the janitor was inebriated and quickly lost consciousness. The janitor found that Dr. Gallup had already buried the kids after killing them when he awoke. The janitor killed Gallup as well after grabbing his gun in a fit of wrath. The youngsters that were buried weren't dead after all. They quickly emerged from their tombs resembling zombies and have been causing chaos ever since. Following the incident, the janitor ran away to Dr. Gallup's lab, took all the papers that would have allowed him to be arrested, and set fire to the home. He has been monitoring the monsters ever since, admitting that he is the one who routinely eavesdrops on police transmissions. The janitor claims that he is deeply ashamed of the atrocities he did in the past. Chris is shocked when he shoots himself in the head to cap off his speech. Conversely, Lexi discovers that someone has broken in while she is watching a child at home. Fearing for their lives, the two duck into a tiny castle and use it to control a toy automobile equipped with a camera. As they guide it to the front door, they spot a massive man who happens to be none other than Pooh. The monster soon makes his way upstairs and finds them, but Lexi and the child manage to get away. There are several police officers outside. When Lexi apprehensively says that there is a creature inside the house, the officers don't think her. Nevertheless, one of the police women is dispatched to look into the situation. However, Pooh quickly attacks the female police officer, ripping out her hand and stabbing her in the face with it. We learn later that Chris took numerous things from the janitor's home, including notes and Dr. Gallup's private voice recordings. He talks about the effectiveness of his child experimentation in one of the recordings. The children are now assuming the forms of the exact creatures that their genetic makeup has connected them to. Additionally, they have developed the ability to regenerate, which allows them to mend injuries. Chris receives a call from Lexi at that very moment, briefing him on the circumstances. Lexi also says that one of their pals was discovered dead at his house earlier, and she advises Chris to call his parents since they might be in danger. Sadly, we discover that Pooh has already reached Chris' house, so it is too late. He breaks into the house and kills Mom by hitting her skull with several sharp objects several times. Dad's cries of desperation are heard as he becomes the next victim. When Pooh discovers the little girl, the action suddenly shifts to him discovering a childhood photo of Chris. Chris returns home shortly thereafter to find his parents' bodies lying in wait. Although this totally destroys him, his problems are not yet solved. Chris discovers his sister missing when he dashes to her room. A rave party is in full swing on the other side of town. However, they had no idea that it would be their last party ever. Pooh soon shows up at the location and starts killing the defenseless individuals one by one. When the killing takes place in front of everyone, the survivors quickly find a secure place to hide and chaos breaks out within the hallway. Regretfully, Tigger, another creature, joins the group as they dash outside. With his flexible body and keen claws, he dismembers multiple girls, referring to them as bitch. Meanwhile, Chris hears about the party chaos on the radio while searching for his sister. He gets his revolver and moves in that direction after realizing that the monsters are here. When he eventually makes it to the location, he finds hundreds of dead bodies scattered about. Chris eventually arrives at a room where he discovers a girl who is still alive. Tigger approaches him from behind as he tries to speak with her, but Chris shoots the creature in the abdomen with courage. Tigger flees with serious injuries as he shoots a few more shots. Pooh is dealing savagely with each of his victims at the same time. Chris then dashes off to the 100 Acre Woods in the hopes of locating his sister. Pooh shows up on the scene shortly after, brandishing a chainsaw. When Chris cries out in desperation for his sister's location, Pooh grabs the chainsaw and chases him throughout the neighborhood. After a brief game of cat and mouse, Chris is on the ground with Pooh poised to attack him. However, the monster notices something at that very moment, so he drops his weapon and turns his back on Chris. He moves forward a short distance and notices the identical grave from whence he emerged. Pooh gets emotional when he imagines the younger version of himself standing next to him. When Chris finally reveals that the monster is actually his brother after referring to him as Billy after observing this. While expressing regret for his ordeal, he begs for his sister's freedom. Nevertheless, Pooh picks up Chris since he no longer gives a damn about his family. Then, out of nowhere, Lexi shows there, and just as Pooh is about to kill her too, Chris gets an axe and eventually kills him by driving it into Pooh's brain. Following this encounter, Chris and Lexi exit the forest, where they find the police, who are appropriately waiting for them given the circumstances, standing by. An officer reports that Ella was discovered safe and sound at home. As it happens, Pooh never hurt the young girl. The last scene takes us to the monster's lair, where Owl has brought all of his departed pals Pooh, Tigger, and Piglet with him. After applying a sticky substance to their wounds, he laughs uncontrollably as they begin to revive. Owl replies, "We'll all be back for you, Christopher Robin," as the film comes to an end. To ensure you never miss any updates on new videos, kindly click the bell icon, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.